A family road trip turns deadly when their SUV plunges into shark-infested waters. As they fight to escape the sinking vehicle, massive great white sharks close in. The water churns with blood as, one by one, the family faces the relentless power of nature's top predator. The chaos drowns desperate cries, and their struggle becomes a horrifying race against time. This is just one of 6 shocking shark attacks that reveal the true danger lurking beneath the waves. Are you ready to dive into the terror? The Garden Route in South Africa is among the most beautiful coastal drives imaginable. It's famous for its cliffs, winding roads, and breathtaking ocean views. But its beauty is also known for its dangers. Sharp curves, steep drops, and the waters below teeming with great white sharks. These sharks, drawn by the seals and fish near Mossel Bay, are some of the ocean's most feared predators. On December 9, 2001, the Van der Merwe family set out to enjoy this stunning route, unaware that their trip would end in a tragedy no one could forget. That morning, Johan van der Merwe was in high spirits. He and his wife Elise had spent weeks planning a trip to bond with their kids, 14-year-old Peter and 10-year-old Annika. The family was well prepared, packing snacks, a camera, and extra layers if the coastal breeze turned chilly. Johan meticulously checked the SUV before departure, confident everything was in good working order, or so he believed. By mid-morning, they were on the road, laughing and excitedly pointing out dolphins swimming in the distance. The garden route's narrow roads made Johan drive cautiously, especially on the steeper sections near Mossel Bay. The SUV picked up speed as they climbed a curve overlooking the ocean. Johan pressed the brake, but nothing happened. He pushed harder, panic setting in as the vehicle didn't respond. The family felt the car lurch forward, gaining momentum down the incline. Elise gripped her seat while Peter and Annika clung to each other in the back. The SUV swerved dangerously close to the cliff's edge. Johan fought the wheel, trying to steer them to safety, but the brakes failed. The vehicle smashed through the guardrail, tumbling down the rocky cliffside before violently plunging into the ocean. The impact shattered the windshield and water flooded the cabin almost instantly. Johan, dazed but conscious, reacted first. He unbuckled his seatbelt, shouting instructions as he turned to free Elise. Water poured in, rising quickly. Peter kicked at the back door, trying to push it open as Annika clung to her mother, screaming. Finally, Peter managed to force the door wide enough to escape, and the others followed, surfacing one by one in the choppy waves. The family clung to pieces of the wreckage, gasping for air as they tried to assess their surroundings. Johan spotted a fishing boat nearby and waved frantically, hoping to catch the attention of the man on board. The fisherman, Willem de Bruin, had already seen the crash and was steering his boat toward them. But he wasn't the only one drawn by the commotion. The splashing and noise had caught the attention of nearby great white sharks. At first, Johan thought the fins cutting through the water were dolphins, but his stomach sank when he saw their size and movement. He realized they were surrounded. The predators circled slowly, their curiosity growing with each pass. One shark struck first. It darted toward Johan, knocking him off his piece of debris. The impact sent him underwater, where he came face to face with the massive predator. Its jaws clamped onto his leg, pulling him deeper. Johan kicked furiously, punching at the shark's snout, but its grip was unrelenting. Blood clouded the water as Johan disappeared into the depths. Peter watched in horror as his father was dragged under. Before he could process what was happening, another shark targeted him. The teenager tried to swim toward his mother and sister, but the predator was faster. It struck him from below, biting his arm and pulling him off balance. Peter thrashed wildly, screaming as the shark's teeth tore into him. His strength gave out and he was dragged beneath the waves. Elise held Annika tightly, trying to shield her daughter from the chaos. The little girl sobbed, clutching her mother's neck as they floated together on a piece of debris. Elise's heart raced as the water around them churned with blood and fins. She prayed the sharks would leave them alone, but her hope was shattered when a third shark swam straight for them. The shark lunged at Annika, its massive jaws clamping onto her leg. Elise screamed, refusing to let go of her daughter. She grabbed the shark, hitting it with all her strength, but the predator thrashed violently, pulling Annika from her grasp. The little girl's cries were cut short as she disappeared underwater. Elise was alone now. Her mind raced with terror and grief, but she didn't have time to process it. The sharks weren't finished. One of them turned its attention to her, circling tightly before lunging. She tried to swim away, but the predator was too fast. Its powerful jaws closed around her midsection, dragging her under. The water churned as Elise struggled, but the shark's strength was too much. Within moments, the ocean grew still again. Willem reached the scene moments later, his heart pounding as he surveyed the wreckage. He had seen the family in the water moments ago, but now all that remained were pieces of the SUV and personal items floating on the surface. A backpack, a shoe, and a child's stuffed animal bobbed among the debris. Willem sat frozen, unable to comprehend the horror he had just witnessed. When authorities arrived hours later, they found no survivors. Willem recounted the events with trembling hands, describing the shark's brutal attacks and the family's desperate struggle. The story of the Van der Merwe family became a grim reminder of the unpredictable dangers of both the road and the ocean. For those who heard it, the tale of their final moments was a chilling example of how quickly joy can turn to tragedy. The small town of Jeffreys Bay, South Africa, is a surfer's dream. Known for its perfect waves and stunning coastline, it's a place where the ocean feels alive. Great white sharks also roam these waters, drawn by seals and fish that thrive along the coast. For surfers, the sharks are an ever-present risk, but the thrill of the waves often outweighs the fear. On June 18, 2008, Jared Stevens, a 29-year-old local surfer, headed out for an early morning session, unaware that the day would change his life forever. Jared had been surfing since he was a teenager. The ocean was his escape, where he felt confident and in control. That morning he woke before dawn, grabbing his board and wetsuit before driving to the beach. The sky was just beginning to brighten as he arrived. The water was calm, the waves rolling steadily, and no other surfers were in sight. It was a solo session, just how Jared liked it. Jared paddled past the breakers, his arms cutting smoothly through the water. He sat on his board, scanning the horizon for the next set of waves. The rhythm of the ocean was familiar to him, and he felt at ease. He caught a few smaller waves, carving through the water with precision. His confidence grew as he paddled further out, searching for the bigger waves he loved. As he waited, something moved beneath him. A shadow passed under his board, large and slow. Jared glanced down but dismissed it as a school of fish. Shadows like that weren't uncommon. He had seen them many times before without incident. He shifted his focus back to the waves, ready to catch the next one. The shadow returned, this time closer. Jared noticed it again but told himself it was nothing. He didn't want to let fear ruin the session. But as he paddled to position himself for a wave, the shadow moved with him, gliding silently below. It wasn't a school of fish. Jared's heart began to race, though he tried to keep calm. The shadow rose sharply. Instantly, a massive great white shark breached the water, striking Jared's board with incredible force. He was thrown into the air, landing hard in the water. Disoriented, he struggled to find his board, his arms flailing as the waves splashed around him. Then he felt it, the shark's body brushing against his leg. Jared spun in the water, his adrenaline surging. The shark circled him, its massive dorsal fin cutting through the surface. He kicked hard, trying to keep his distance, but the predator was relentless. It lunged again, this time grabbing his leg in its jaws. The pain was instant and overwhelming, like a searing fire shooting up his body. Jared screamed, his voice swallowed by the ocean as he thrashed against the shark's grip. Using his free leg, Jared kicked the shark's snout repeatedly. He remembered hearing that sharks are sensitive there, and he hoped to make it let go. The predator released him briefly, but it didn't leave. Blood from his wound clouded the water, driving the shark into a frenzy. Jared knew he had to get to his board, his only chance of escape. He spotted the board a few feet away and swam toward it with every ounce of strength. The shark lunged again, its jaws snapping inches from his arm. Jared grabbed the board and climbed on, his hands trembling as he tried to balance. The shark circled below, its movements faster and more aggressive. Jared paddled furiously toward the shore, his injured leg dragging in the water like dead weight. Each stroke felt heavier than the last, the pain in his leg almost unbearable. The shark wasn't done. It rammed the board from underneath, knocking Jared off again. He hit the water hard, his body twisting as he tried to stay afloat. The shark came at him head-on, its jaws open wide. Jared used his board as a shield, holding it between himself and the predator. The shark bit down, tearing into the board and shaking it violently. Jared held on, his knuckles white as he fought to stay alive. The shore felt impossibly far. Jared knew he couldn't outswim the shark but refused to give up. He used the damaged board to push himself forward, paddling with one arm while keeping his eyes on the predator. The shark circled again, its dorsal fin cutting tighter and tighter arcs around him. Jared could feel its presence, its sheer power radiating through the water. As he neared the shallows, Jared's strength began to fade. He was bleeding heavily, his vision blurring as exhaustion set in. The shark made one last charge, bumping the board with its snout. Jared kicked weakly, his movement slowing as he fought to stay conscious. The waves carried him closer to shore, where a group of bystanders had gathered, shouting and pointing. Jared didn't have the energy to call for help. He focused on staying afloat, his body screaming in pain. Finally, Jared reached the shore, his strength nearly gone. Two surfers sprinted to his aid, dragging him out of the water and onto the sand. He collapsed, his chest heaving as he struggled for breath. His leg was a horrifying sight. Deep gashes and shredded flesh stretched from his calf to his thigh. Blood pooled around him, soaking into the sand. In the distance, the shark's ominous fin lingered briefly before vanishing into the depths. Paramedics arrived minutes later, loading Jared onto a stretcher. As they worked to stop the bleeding, Jared stared at the ocean, the waves crashing peacefully as if nothing had happened. The water felt like an enemy for the first time in his life. Jared survived the attack, but his wounds were severe, both physically and emotionally. The ocean, once his sanctuary, had become a place of terror. After weeks of recovery and reflection, he decided to retire from surfing. The waves would always call to him, but the memory of that shadow beneath the water, the predator that nearly took his life, would never fade. The waters off Kaikoura, New Zealand, are as beautiful as dangerous. Known for its rich marine life, this coastal region attracts divers from all over the world. The deep trenches and vibrant reefs are teeming with sea creatures, from schools of colorful fish to stingrays gliding silently below. But these waters are also home to great white sharks, apex predators that rule the depths. For scuba divers, the thrill of exploring these waters comes with an unspoken risk. On March 10, 2010, Samantha Foster, a seasoned scuba diver, set out on what should have been a routine dive. At 32 years old, Samantha had been diving for over a decade. She loved the ocean's mystery and had always respected its power. That day, she and her team of 4 planned to explore a well-known reef a few miles off the Kaikoura coast. It was a site they'd visited before, rich with coral and marine life. The morning started like any other. Samantha arrived at the dock early, greeting her teammates and reviewing their plans. They loaded the boat with their gear, oxygen tanks, fins, cameras, and safety equipment. Samantha double-checked her regulator and wetsuit, which was her usual pre-dive routine. The sun was just starting to rise as the boat headed out to sea, the water calm and inviting. Spirits were high as the group joked and talked about what they might see that day. By 9 a.m., they reached the dive site. Samantha scanned the surface as she suited up, noting the clear water and mild currents. It looked like a perfect day for diving. One by one, the team slipped into the water, their fins slicing through the surface as they descended. The reef came into view, a stunning mix of color and movement. Fish darted between the corals, and a stingray glided lazily past the group. The divers spread out slightly, each exploring a different section of the reef. Samantha loved these moments, alone with her thoughts, surrounded by the quiet hum of the ocean. She swam toward a patch of coral teeming with life, her camera capturing the intricate patterns and bright hues. She felt completely at peace, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. Great white sharks are rarely seen near divers, but when they do appear, it's often with little warning. At nearly 15 feet long, the shark approaching Samantha was a massive, powerful predator. It moved slowly at first, its body blending with the shadows of the ocean floor. Samantha didn't notice it at first, too focused on the fish flitting around her. When she turned and saw the dark shape, her heart skipped. She froze, instinctively trying to make sense of what she was seeing. At first, she thought it might be a large stingray or a harmless fish. But as the shark rose from the shadows, its unmistakable shape became clear. Its dorsal fin cut through the water, and its black, unblinking eyes locked onto her. Samantha stayed as still as possible, her training telling her not to panic or make sudden movements. She slowly began to back away, hoping to distance herself from the predator. The shark didn't retreat. It circled her, its movements deliberate and unsettling. Samantha's breathing quickened, each breath echoing loudly in her regulator. She scanned the water, trying to locate her teammates, who were too far away to see her signal. She was alone. The shark attacked suddenly, surging forward with terrifying speed. Its jaws clamped down on her leg, the force like being caught in a crushing vice. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, spreading through her body as the predator shook its head violently. Blood filled the water, clouding her vision. Samantha kicked at the shark's snout with her free leg, desperate to break free. She clawed at its body, her fingernails scraping uselessly against its rough skin. The commotion caught the attention of her teammates, who saw the cloud of blood and rushed to her aid. One diver grabbed a metal rod for probing the reef and swam toward the shark, striking it repeatedly. The predator released Samantha, but it didn't leave. Blood in the water seemed to drive it into a frenzy. It circled again, preparing for another attack. Samantha tried to swim toward her teammates, but her injured leg was useless. Her arms burned as she pulled herself forward, the weight of her gear and the pain in her body slowing her down. The shark lunged again, this time grabbing her arm. She felt its teeth sink into her flesh, tearing muscle and skin. The force pulled her backward, dragging her away from her team. Her teammates acted quickly, creating a barrier between Samantha and the shark. They struck at the predator with rods and knives, their movements frantic but coordinated. One diver managed to pull Samantha away, wrapping an arm around her chest and dragging her upward. The shark circled one last time before disappearing into the depths. The ascent felt endless. Samantha drifted in and out of consciousness, her body weak from blood loss. Her teammates kept her buoyant, their faces tense as they scanned the water for any sign of the shark. When they finally broke the surface, the boat crew hauled Samantha on board, working quickly to stop the bleeding. Her leg and arm were severely mangled, the wounds deep and ragged. She gasped for air, her body trembling from shock. The boat raced back to shore, every bump and wave sending fresh pain through Samantha's body. Her teammates stayed by her side, applying pressure to her wounds and keeping her conscious. By the time they reached the dock, paramedics were waiting. They loaded her onto a stretcher, the sight of her bloodied wetsuit sending chills through everyone who saw her. At the hospital, doctors worked for hours to save Samantha's life. They managed to stop the bleeding and repair much of the damage, but the scars were permanent. The shark's teeth had torn through muscle and bone, leaving her with a limp and limited use of her arm. The physical wounds were devastating, but the emotional impact ran deeper. Once fearless in the water, Samantha now had a new understanding of its dangers. The shark had not been malicious. It was following its instincts. But the encounter left Samantha forever changed. Beneath the surface, she had faced nature's raw power and survived, though not without a cost. Her love for the ocean remained, but the scars she bore were a constant reminder of the delicate balance between humans and the wild. Off the rocky coast of Maine, fishing is more than a livelihood. It's a way of life. The waters here are rich with cod, haddock, and lobster, drawing fishermen from across the region. But these same waters are home to larger predators. Though not as common in the North Atlantic as in warmer waters, great white sharks are known to patrol the area, following the seals and other marine life they feed on. Fishermen know to respect these predators, but the line between respect and danger sometimes blurs in the most tragic ways. On August 12, 1998, John Matthews and his 16-year-old son Chris set out before dawn. The father and son often fished together, working from their small but sturdy boat, the Blue Horizon. John, 47, was an experienced fisherman who had spent decades navigating these waters. For Chris, mornings like this were a chance to learn from his father and dream of following in his footsteps. The sky was just beginning to lighten as they left the dock in Boothbay Harbor, the quiet town they called home. The day started well. By 7 a.m., the pair had already pulled in their first haul, nets heavy with cod. John steered the boat expertly, watching the horizon while Chris sorted through their catch. The boy worked quickly, tossing smaller fish into the water and placing the keepers into the boat's cooler. They joked and talked as they worked, their bond strengthened by years of shared mornings like this. Around 9 a.m., John moved the boat further out to a deeper spot where the larger fish tended to gather. The water was calm, and the breeze smelled salt and seaweed. Chris leaned over the side, watching schools of fish dart below the surface. Neither noticed the shadow that began to follow their boat. Great white sharks are powerful hunters, and when one decides to investigate a disturbance, it can go unnoticed until it's too late. The shark trailing the blue horizon was enormous, nearly 18 feet long. Drawn by the vibrations of the boat and the scent of fish in the water, it moved silently beneath them, its dark silhouette blending with the depths. The first jolt hit the boat as John and Chris prepared to haul in another net. Chris stumbled, grabbing the side to steady himself while John looked around confused. A second, harder impact followed, and the boat rocked violently this time. John peered over the side, his heart sinking when he saw the dorsal fin slicing through the water. The shark's massive head emerged briefly, its black eyes fixed on the boat. John shouted for Chris to stay back as the shark attacked again, ramming the hull with incredible force. The sound of the impact echoed across the water. The boat shuddered, and water began to seep in through a crack near the stern. John grabbed a gaff hook and moved toward the edge, determined to drive the predator away. Chris, frozen with fear, watched as his father swung the hook toward the shark. The great white lunged, its jaws clamping onto the side of the boat. Teeth as sharp as knives tore into the wood, splinters flying as the predator thrashed. John struck the shark's head repeatedly, but the blows seemed to have little effect. The shark released its grip, only to circle back for another attack. Chris felt the boat shift beneath him, the damaged hull groaning under the strain. As the shark surged forward again, it struck with terrifying precision. This time its jaws closed around John's leg. The force pulled him off balance, and he fell into the water. Chris screamed as he watched his father disappear beneath the surface. John fought desperately, punching and kicking at the predator, but the shark's strength was overwhelming. Blood spread quickly through the water, turning it red as the shark dragged John further from the boat. Chris tried to help, grabbing a rope and throwing it toward his father, but the distance was too great. The shark attacked again, its powerful tail churning the water. John's struggles grew weaker as the predator's jaws tore into him. Chris could only watch, paralyzed by fear and helplessness, as his father's body slipped beneath the waves. The shark lingered briefly, circling the boat as if deciding whether to strike again. Chris scrambled to the controls, his hands shaking as he started the engine. The damaged boat sputtered but roared to life, and Chris steered it toward the shore, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Tears streamed down his face as the reality of what had happened began to sink in. When Chris reached Boothbay Harbor, the boat was barely holding together. Fishermen on the dock rushed to help, pulling the boy from the vessel and listening in shock as he recounted the attack. The Coast Guard was called and a search was launched, but only fragments of the blue horizon and a few pieces of torn fishing gear were recovered. John's body was never found. The attack made headlines, shocking the quiet fishing community and drawing attention to the dangers of the ocean. For Chris, the memory of that day would never fade. His father's screams, the shark's dark silhouette, and the blood-stained water were images that would haunt him for the rest of his life. John Matthews symbolized the ocean's raw power, a reminder that even the most experienced fishermen are never truly safe in the predator's domain. The Bahamas is a destination most people only dream about visiting. The turquoise waters, stunning coral reefs, and luxurious resorts offer an escape from the ordinary. Andros Island, one of the region's most remote and pristine islands, draws visitors seeking adventure and tranquility. Beneath the surface, however, these waters conceal predators that remind us how dangerous the ocean can be. Among them are great white sharks, drawn to the area by rich marine life and disturbances in the water. On July 16, 1995, a snorkeling tour became a nightmare when these predators surfaced. Emily and Tom Richards arrived at the resort a few days earlier to celebrate their 10th wedding anniversary. Both were in their mid-30s. They had saved for this trip for years. Emily, a school teacher, loved exploring the reefs, while Tom, an amateur photographer, couldn't wait to capture the underwater scenery. The couple had spent their first days lounging by the pool, dining on fresh seafood and strolling along the beach. By the fourth day, they decided to join a guided snorkeling tour, a chance to experience the beauty beneath the waves. The day started like any other. The group of 10 snorkelers boarded a small boat early in the morning. The guide, Marco, was an experienced diver who had led countless tours in these waters. The ship carried snorkeling gear, life vests, and refreshments, and the mood was light as everyone anticipated the adventure ahead. The ride to the reef was smooth and the group chatted excitedly as the boat anchored in shallow water about a mile offshore. The reef was mesmerizing, a vibrant underwater city bursting with life. Coral structures rose like majestic towers from the ocean floor, their surfaces teeming with fish darting in and out of crevices. Bright parrotfish, shimmering angelfish, and playful clownfish created a living kaleidoscope of color. Emily and Tom started off sticking close together, marveling at the beauty around them. But as Tom became engrossed in capturing stunning close-ups of the reef with his waterproof camera, he drifted deeper while Emily remained near the surface, mesmerized by the rhythmic sway of the water. As the group spread out, the water grew lively. People kicked and splashed, their fins stirring up clouds of sand. The noise and movement attracted more fish, but it also caught the attention of something larger. A pack of great white sharks had been hunting nearby, their sensitive senses picking up on the vibrations and scent in the water. At first, the sharks hung back, their shadows blending with the ocean floor. Then they moved closer. Emily was the first to notice a shadow below her. She paused, her heart racing as the shape grew more defined. At first, she thought it might be a stingray or a harmless reef shark, but as the creature moved, the distinct outline of a great white became clear. She reached for Tom, who was still distracted by his camera. Before they could react, the first shark attacked. The predator moved with terrifying speed, lunging at a snorkeler on the edge of the group. The water erupted as the shark's jaws closed around its target, pulling them under in seconds. Blood spread through the water and panic rippled through the group. The other tourists screamed and splashed, frantically trying to swim toward the boat. Marco yelled for calm, but the chaos was overwhelming. Emily and Tom swam toward each other, their breaths quick and panicked. The sharks, now in a frenzy, attacked again. One shark struck a snorkeler near the middle of the group, its powerful jaws tearing through flesh. The victim disappeared beneath the surface as another shark joined the attack. The water churned red, and the remaining snorkelers kicked and thrashed, desperate to escape. Tom grabbed Emily's arm, urging her toward the boat. As a third shark swam toward them, they swam together, their movements frantic. Emily turned just in time to see the predator's massive dorsal fin cut through the water. Tom positioned himself between Emily and the shark, trying to protect her as it lunged. The shark's jaws closed around Tom's leg, pulling him away. Emily screamed, frozen for a moment before instinct took over. She kicked harder, her legs burning as she swam toward the boat. She looked back to see Tom struggling against the shark, punching and kicking as it dragged him deeper. Another shark joined the attack, its powerful body thrashing as it tore into Tom. Blood filled the water, and Emily's vision blurred with tears as she turned away. The boat came into view, and Emily used her strength to grab the ladder. Her hands shook as she pulled herself on board, collapsing onto the deck. Marco and the other survivors climbed aboard, their faces pale with shock. The group was smaller now, and the weight of what had happened settled heavily on everyone. The boat sped back to the resort, the survivors sitting in stunned silence. Emily stared at the horizon, her mind racing with images of Tom's final moments. She clutched her chest, her breaths shallow and uneven, as the realization of his loss hit her. Rescue efforts were launched immediately, but no trace of Tom or the other victims was ever recovered. The attack made headlines worldwide, and the resort faced scrutiny over its safety protocols. For Emily, the trip that began as a celebration of love ended in unimaginable loss. Once a symbol of peace and beauty, the turquoise waters of the Bahamas became a haunting reminder of nature's unpredictable power. The waters off Clearwater Beach, Florida, are a haven for adventure seekers. Known for their calm waves and endless horizon, they invite visitors to explore the vast blue expanse. Among the attractions, Kayaking is one of the most popular activities, offering a peaceful way to connect with nature. But these waters also hide powerful predators. On July 25, 1999, what began as a carefree outing for two best friends became a terrifying encounter with one of the ocean's deadliest creatures. Megan Johnson and Claire Davis had been inseparable since childhood. Both 25 had decided to spend their weekend kayaking along the coast. Megan loved the ocean and had been kayaking before, while Claire, though less experienced, was eager to try something new. The morning was perfect, with the early sun shining down as they arrived at the rental shop to pick up their single-person kayaks. By 8:30 a.m., the women paddled out, their bright red and blue kayaks gliding across the calm water. They chatted and laughed, enjoying the solitude of being away from the crowded beach. Megan led the way, her paddle slicing through the water effortlessly, while Claire took her time, getting used to the rhythm. Their destination was a small reef about a mile offshore, known for its marine life and clear waters. At first, the trip felt like a dream. The water was so clear they could see fish darting below their kayaks. Megan pointed out a pair of rays gliding gracefully near the surface. Although slightly nervous about being so far from shore, Claire began to relax and enjoy the beauty around her. They stopped occasionally to rest, letting their kayaks drift as they soaked in the peaceful surroundings. As they moved further from the coast, the water changed. The shallow reef disappeared, replaced by deeper, darker waters. The vibrant coral and fish gave way to a vast emptiness below. Megan, ever the adventurer, paddled ahead, encouraging Claire to follow. The two were alone, with no other boats or kayakers in sight. It was then that the first shadow appeared beneath Megan's kayak. At first, it was faint, a blur moving through the water. Megan noticed it but dismissed it as a large fish or a harmless shark that typically avoided people. Claire, trailing behind, didn't see it at all. They continued paddling, unaware that the shadow was following them. Great white sharks are powerful hunters, their senses finely tuned to detect movement and vibrations in the water. This shark, nearly 16 feet long, had been drawn to the area by the sound of paddles and the possibility of an easy meal. It stayed low at first, circling silently beneath the kayaks. The attack happened without warning. The shark surged upward, ramming into the bottom of Megan's kayak with incredible force. The impact lifted the kayak partially out of the water before it slammed back down, tipping Megan into the sea. Claire froze, her heart racing as she watched her friend struggle to surface. Megan grabbed the overturned kayak, gasping for air as she tried to climb back on. The shark, however, wasn't finished. Its massive dorsal fin sliced through the water as it circled back. Megan saw it coming and tried to swim toward Claire, but the predator closed the distance quickly. It lunged, biting into the kayak and shaking it violently. The sound of splintering plastic echoed across the water. Megan kicked furiously, trying to free herself from the wreckage as the shark turned its attention to her. Paralyzed with fear, Claire watched helplessly as the shark grabbed Megan by the leg. Megan screamed, her body twisting as the predator pulled her under. Blood spread through the water, turning it red as the shark thrashed. Claire's instincts kicked in and she paddled closer, hoping to grab her friend's hand. Megan resurfaced briefly, her face pale and her movements frantic. But the shark struck again, its jaws clamping down on her side. The water churned violently as Megan disappeared beneath the waves. Claire called out, her voice shaking, but there was no response. The shark remained visible momentarily, its fin cutting through the water as it circled the area. Then, as quickly as it had come, it was gone. Claire was alone now, rocking in her kayak as she tried to process what had just happened. She scanned the water, hoping to see Megan resurface, but all that remained was debris from the destroyed kayak and a faint red trail. The realization that her best friend was gone hit her like a wave, leaving her numb with shock. Terrified that the shark might return, Claire focused on paddling back to shore. Her arms ached with each stroke, but she pushed through the pain, her fear giving her strength. She glanced over her shoulder, expecting to see the predator's fin behind her. The horizon seemed impossibly far, and the empty water around her felt vast and unforgiving. After what felt like hours, a small fishing boat appeared in the distance. Claire waved frantically, her paddle splashing as she signaled for help. The fishermen spotted her and pulled alongside, lifting her trembling body onto their boat. Claire collapsed onto the deck, her breath ragged as she tried to explain what had happened. The fishermen turned their boat toward shore, radioing for help as they sped away. By the time they reached land, rescue teams were waiting. Claire, still in shock, could barely speak. Search efforts began immediately, with boats and helicopters scouring the area for any sign of Megan. But no trace of her was ever found. The attack left the community reeling, and the story made headlines, a grim reminder of the ocean's unpredictability. For Claire, the loss of her best friend was a wound that would never fully heal. The memory of that day, Megan's laughter, the shadow beneath the kayak, and the terror in her eyes, haunted her every time she looked at the ocean. What began as a simple kayaking adventure became a nightmare, forever changing the lives of those left behind.